Hey guys, hope you're all having a great day. I want to take this quick moment to talk about the whole Bungie situation and then get into some thoughts about it. So to kind of quickly recap what we're talking about if you don't already know, Sony in their fiscal year reporting marked Bungie down as a $765 million impairment loss. Now let's get into what that actually means because it is important. An impairment loss is an adjustment to the value, right? Sony purchased Bungie back in I think 2022 for $3.6 billion. And even at that time, a lot of us were like, hey, you're paying too much, right? I think Xbox purchased all of Bethesda and ZeniMax for $4 billion. And don't get me wrong, I'm not hating on Bungie. Lord knows I loved that studio. They gave me Halo back in the day, which is my favorite franchise. But with that being said, $4 billion for all of ZeniMax and Bethesda's products versus Bungie, which at the time was really only doing Destiny. So a lot of us did get this sense of like, hey, Sony's kind of overpaying, and a lot of us did kind of feel that it was in response to Xbox buying Bethesda, which I don't blame Sony for wanting to do acquisitions after that, right? They kind of have to compete against Xbox, which at that time, I don't even think they purchased Activision Blizzard yet. At that time, they were just purchasing up a bunch of studios, and Bethesda was the biggest one at the moment. And to Sony's credit, what they were really doing was not just purchasing the value of Bungie at that time, but the potential value that Bungie was going to bring in the coming years. And obviously now it's hindsight's 2020 because we can look at the performance of their newest game, Marathon, as well as Destiny 2 and all the expansions that came out since then. And we can look at it and say, hey, it really underperformed. But if you're a Sony exec at that time and you're really trying to push live service into your ecosystem, and you have Bungie, who at the time was actually really good at providing a live service game, particularly in terms of profits, right? You probably looked at that and saw what they were working on for the future and said, you know what, I think this is going to be a $3.6 billion deal. Let's do it. I'm not saying I would necessarily agree with that, and that would be my decision to make, but I'm just saying that was their thought process at the time. Well, here we are now in 2026, and Marathon has launched, and it didn't perform as well. I don't think it performed so god awful like some people tried to present it as, right? Critically, it's been pretty well received by the fans. Performance wise, in terms of sales, I think it definitely underperformed, and that's pretty much what Sony's saying here too. But I'm just not trying to shit on the game or the studio as a whole and be like, oh, both of these are just awful. Bungie's awful now. Marathon's awful now. Truth be told, I haven't played Marathon, but I actually do want to. Don't get me wrong, it's not on the top of my list of games to play right now, but I do want to give it a try and see what it's like, and it doesn't look terrible to me, so I'm not trying to shit on the game. But to kind of recap, this impairment loss is not us saying, oh, Bungie burned through $765 million. Now, really what it is an adjustment to the value. Sony purchased it for that $3.6 billion, which is a lot of money, but they thought that it was going to, of course, be appraised at a higher value nowadays after a Marathon launched. But with that being said, we know that's not the case, and we know that the value of Bungie is a lot lower, kind of like we all expected back then when they first purchased it. But again, it's easy for us to say that because hindsight's 2020. I will say, though, there probably were some good signs to point to say that 3.6 was overpaying for it. And I do think this highlights a really important component of modern day studios, gaming studios that is, and games in general, and that's that, the industry has changed quite a lot. And these studios that used to be once beloved, and don't get me wrong, I'm not trying to hate on Bungie so much right now, but a lot of people kind of hold it in their heart as like, these studios can do no wrong, and forget that modern day Bungie is nothing compared to what it was back in the day when they launched, Combat Evolved, Halo 2, Halo 3, Halo Reach, and even Destiny. I mean, the studio has changed so much from the Destiny 1 launch versus where we're at now. Obviously, big players like Marty O'Donnell left or got fired from Bungie. And then there was a bunch of controversy with that and lawsuits that came out. And there was constant controversy throughout the lifespan of, post-Microsoft Bungie. Not necessarily all of it being so bad on Bungie's part, right? At some point they were owned or contracted with Activision, and apparently it was just awful to work for them. So Bungie, I guess, paid up to leave that contract or what. But apparently they've had some hard times, even being an independent studio or semi-independent studio, however you want to put it. And now here we are, and they were purchased by Sony, and at the time the news broke and they said, hey, we're going to maintain being pretty independent, but obviously after everything, we're actually seeing them being more and more in line with PlayStation leadership and being a PlayStation studio rather than an independent one who just happens to be owned by Sony. So kind of key takeaway there, key recap is, a lot of us fans, because I'm definitely a fan, look back with too much fondness on some of this stuff. And I'm a victim, or not a victim, I'm a perpetrator of that, where I am constantly having those rose-colored glasses on certain things and going, oh, I really would love to see Bungie do well because it's a studio that I love so much, but we always forget that so much has changed that it's almost like it's not even the same company anymore. And it's, as a fan looking in, that's hard to say because it's not like I work there, I don't know everything. But as a fan looking in, you see staff leave, you see the leadership change so much, you see the culture change so much that you kind of have to ask yourself, it's like, is this even Bungie anymore? And hopefully that isn't the case. Hopefully Bungie will recover. And I do think that they will, right? It's not like I think Bungie's going to go away and they're going to bankrupt and they're going to get shut down. I mean, ultimately, I guess that is a Sony decision, which at that point, who knows? Because, big companies like EA shut down really successful and talented studios. So you never know nowadays. But with that being said, I wouldn't put money on it. I think Bungie has still a ton of potential for the future. And I'm sure that they're going to bounce back pretty well in terms of more content releases for Marathon, particularly whenever they come out with Destiny 3, which I think definitely will be I think that will definitely happen at this point, right? I'm not trying to say that Bungie didn't have plans to do a Destiny 3, but I think at this point, they don't really have an option. They're going to do it regardless. So I definitely think Bungie can eventually bounce back and hopefully, no pun intended, by the way, because her name's Bungie, get it? And hopefully, I'm sorry, please forgive me. I'm going to have to delete that part. But if it stays in, let me know how bad of a joke that was. But with that being said, I hopefully Bungie does come back and they're going to come back strong and that valuation will eventually build up to probably a place where Sony's happy as long as everything kind of goes well. And what I mean by that is I don't think it all is a gamble, right? I don't think that it's like all so dependent on them really getting lucky. I think it's really just make the right move, stay true to your audience, and it will definitely happen. The bounce back will absolutely happen. It's kind of sad to say, but I think this is like almost a topic that we're specializing in now, where we're talking about old studios and old franchises really having to come back from the brink of death or, critical failures. And, I hate to see that. I want to see a future where things are getting better. And I think ultimately we are heading that direction, not because so many people wised up and was like, oh, what we're doing is wrong, but I think because the audience isn't buying it anymore and consumers are starting to demand better from these companies. And I think better is coming. Let me know what you guys think. Honestly, I got a lot of opinions and a lot of thoughts on these types of things, but I'm not a mind reader. I'm not a psychic. That's a better way to put it. I don't know what the future is going to be, but I do think we're making relatively decent analysis on this and kind of making a prediction based off that. But I could be wrong, and I'm curious what you guys think. All right, guys, I ramble on for way too long, as always. I appreciate you guys watching. I appreciate you guys sticking around. Definitely got more videos come out. Want to talk a little bit more about Halo. Not too much more Halo stuff came out recently, but obviously that being my favorite franchise, I'm always going to just touch on it as much as I can. I don't know why that sounded weird. You kind of get the point I'm making. Whenever something comes out that's interesting enough to talk about, or at least I think is interesting enough to talk about, I'll try and make a video. And if it's really not that interesting, I'll try and make that video very short. So that'll be coming probably right after this video. But yeah, thank you guys. I hope you all have a great day, and we'll see you later.